No other movie genre has suffered so badly at the hands of censors as the horror genre. With censors deciding what audiences should and shouldn't see, this can often result in an end product vastly different to what was originally intended. And while some fortunate films have had old footage found and restored, there are certain other horror movies who haven't been quite so lucky. Well, at least not as of this recording. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 original cuts of horror movies we'll sadly never see. Number 10. Friday the 13th, Parts 2 to 8. The uncensored versions. As a franchise, Friday the 13th has had a notoriously tough time with the censors. While the original film was relatively unscathed in this regard, the MPAA started to crack the whip from Friday the 13th Part 2 onwards. Pretty much every death in each subsequent movie was objected to, with Part 5, 7, and 8 suffering the most, with various scenes of explicit gore and nudity banished to the grimy depths of the cutting room floor. Sadly, much of this footage was destroyed, with the remnants of what remains only serving to tease fans with all manner of head-crushing or over-the-top sleeping bag beatings. Sure, the movies as we know them are pretty gruesome at times, but knowing what could have been is forever a sore point with die-hard Friday the 13th fans. Number 9. Amityville 2, The Possession, Damiano Damiani's original cut. With over 40 movies carrying the Amityville name, it's fair to say most of those are absolute trash. Seriously, really bad, most of them. However, Amityville 2, The Possession is genuinely pretty darn good. A prequel, The Possession tells the story of the Montellis, the family who moved into the infamous house before the Lutz family of the first film. Of course, all manner of spooky shenanigans take place, with the Montellis' oldest son Sonny being slowly corrupted by the evil that resides within the property. Still, the version of Amityville 2 seen by audiences is different to the one Damiano Damiani intended. While the final cut does feature elements of incest, the version shown to test audiences featured an even more twisted angle on this and also included scenes of sexual assault. While the director claimed he wanted to upset viewers as much as possible, he certainly did that, but to the extent that certain scenes had to be completely cut, which is probably for the best. Number 8. House of a Thousand Corpses, Rob Zombie's original cut. The movie that set the tone for Rob Zombie's visually grimy, gore-soaked directing career, House of a Thousand Corpses is remembered for its clan of oddball psychopaths, its overly gruesome death sequences, and for playing like Ken Russell handling the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Despite the end product being a violent, bloody affair, there was originally an extended, uncensored version of the film that's never seen the light of day apart from one single screening at an Argentinian film festival back in 2003. That original cut ran 105 minutes, but was trimmed down to 89 minutes, with Zombie having since discussed how nobody has any idea where the cut footage is, with that cut footage supposedly giving baby Firefly a little more time in the spotlight. Number 7. Sleepaway Camp 3, Teenage Wasteland, the uncensored version. The original Sleepaway Camp was gruesome, yet surprisingly not all that graphic. Although Sleepaway Camp 2 Unhappy Campers gleefully cranked up the gore and nudity to an almost comedic effect. Unfortunately, the third movie received some hostile treatment from the censors, with plenty of carnage removed, which is a massive shame given how creative some of the death sequences here are. Technically, this entry is bending the rules slightly though, as a VHS work print features these deaths in their original form, although that footage is extremely low quality and fairly incomplete. More recent Blu-ray releases did feature this footage in some capacity, and Retrosploitation did release the VHS back in 2018, but all of those editions are nowadays out of print. Number 6. My Soul to Take, Wes Craven's original cut. Throughout his legendary career, Wes Craven often struggled with censors, and producers for that matter, and that was again the case with 2010's My Soul to Take. Initially planned to be a more moody, supernatural thriller with greater emphasis on characters and crafting a dread-filled atmosphere, what we ended up with was basically a fairly mindless slasher. Studio interference put an end to Wes's plans, with the film reshot and post-converted into 3D in an attempt to boost ticket sales and cash in on the 3D gimmick that had become popular again at that time. Of course, My Soul to Take ended up being both a critical and commercial failure, and no footage has surfaced of Wes Craven's original vision in the years since the film's release. Number 5. My Bloody Valentine, the full uncut version. A seriously dark and mean-spirited slasher, 1981's My Bloody Valentine sees an imposing figure in a miner's outfit looking to get a good old dollop of revenge by butchering a slew of teenagers. One of the most notorious movies when it comes to censorship, My Bloody Valentine has seen several attempts attempts to reinstate all of its cut footage over the decades, and while companies such as Shout Factory and Lionsgate have done incredible work in restoring some of this footage, the infamous double drill impalement has never been found, with many horror fans believing this sequence to be gone for good. Until that footage is found, fans will continue to be frustrated that we're so close to the complete uncensored version of My Bloody Valentine, yet so far away. Number 4. Alien 3, David Fincher's version. Alien 3's troubled production is the stuff of legend, with a disastrous, confused theatrical cut released to an ice-cold reception all the way back in 1993. Thankfully, we got a special edition of Alien 3 a decade later, that'd be the assembly cut, but that was put together without any involvement from director David Fincher. That assembly cut does deliver an extra 37 minutes and 12 seconds alternative footage, in turn drastically changing the narrative and fleshing out certain secondary characters, and making for a more polished and cohesive film. However, one has to imagine what Alien 3 would look like if David Fincher himself oversaw a new edit, bringing the movie more in line with the dark, depressive ideas he'd originally had in mind. And being honest, a few CGI touch-ups wouldn't go amiss either. Number 3. Legion, William Peter Blatty's original cut of The Exorcist 3. Oh, the holy grail of the horror genre. With William Peter Blatty taking the director's chair following the awful Exorcist 2, The Heretic, The Exorcist 3 was a more thought-provoking film, heavy on theological terror and brimming with a constant sense of unease as its tale unraveled. Unfortunately for Blatty though, studio bigwigs got involved and demanded The Exorcist 3 more closely resemble the original movie, even forcing him to tack on an exorcism in the film's finale, causing Blatty's movie to be recut. As it happens, the theatrical cut of The Exorcist 3 is actually pretty fantastic and arguably one of the most underrated sequels in horror history, at least to more mainstream audiences. A Legion cut has been created in the years since then, using newly found footage and dailies footage, but there are still some scenes that have yet to resurface, meaning we're still without the Exorcist 3 that William Peter Blatty originally intended. Still, it's worth noting that both the theatrical cut and the Legion cut make for a great watch, with some fans even preferring the theatrical cut. Number 2. Freaks, Todd Browning's original cut. Audiences in 1932 were simply not ready for a film as downright bizarre as Freaks, the story of scheming trapeze artist Cleopatra and her muscle-bound lover Hercules as they conspire to poison a circus performer and steal their fortune. It's fair to see Todd Browning's movie was a tad unconventional for the time. Freaks was also extremely controversial, so much so the original cut of the film almost saw MGM in a legal dispute after one cinemagoer claimed that Freaks caused her to suffer a miscarriage, with scenes of Cleopatra being set upon or Hercules being castrated deemed far too shocking for audiences of the time. As a result, much of Freaks was reshot due to this negative reaction, with the story padded out and the macabre tone reduced slightly. As for the cut footage, it's believed that this was actually burned by MGM due to the uproar surrounding the film. Number 1. Cherry Falls, the uncensored version. Of all the movies that followed in the footsteps of Scream's success, none have proved as intriguing or enduring as Cherry Falls. This whip-smart entertaining slasher was infamously denied a theatrical release in the US due to its focus on teenagers, with Cherry Falls eventually passed over to the USA Network, who subsequently removed plenty of carnage and sexual content, resulting in a hollow shell of a movie. Of course, Cherry Falls features a serial killer who targets virgins, sending high school students into a frenzy so that they avoid being next on this hit list. For those who saw the original cut of Cherry Falls, it was praised as a highly violent but provocative film that still managed to have its tongue firmly in its cheek. Despite the likes of 88 Films and Shout Factory trying their very best to get this cut footage for Blu-ray releases, nothing has ever come of that, with the original cut of Cherry Falls also being another of horror's holy grails. Also, as a fun fact, due to it premiering on the USA Network, Cherry Falls remains to this day the most expensive TV movie of all time, costing in the region of $14 million.